webinar entitled, Do Your People Really Know About How to Have an Effective Discussion about Safety? As I said, my name's Nick Wharton. I'm Director and a Principal Consultant with JOMC. I also have assisting me Sinead Foster. Let's just hope all the technology will work. If you can hear me, well, that's a pretty good start. Hopefully you can also see my screen. Okay, we've got quite a few people with us, quite a lot of people, a lot of different people as well, some people that we've worked with and some people not. So welcome to all of you, whoever you are and wherever you are, people from all over the place. So that's really good. Okay, just before we start, just a few points about protocol. Clearly, because of the nature of this session, unfortunately for me, because it's not the way I normally like to do these things, I end up having to do nearly all of the talking. Clearly, with the nature of these sessions, we can't just have everybody talking at once. However, having said that, we are keen to have people, and are keen to encourage some form of involvement from people as much as we can. I've allowed time for two periods of questions midway through and at the end. You'll see that we've split the session into two halves. If you do have a question, then please raise your hand electronically. We can do it physically if you like, but Sinead probably won't be able to see you. But there should be a button somewhere on the right-hand side of your screen with a little icon of the hand. If you click on that, then Sinead will be able to see that you want to ask a question, and at the appropriate time she will enable that to happen. Part of the problem with this is that if everybody wants to ask a question, which I'd like to think you all would, then it's a little bit random as to who gets to ask the questions. It's not like a normal session, obviously. And just if you are going to ask a question, just make sure that you are actually connected to the audio. It should say somewhere on the right-hand side. If you are connected, then it should say that you are. Okay, well, we've got limited time, so let's get straight into the session. Got two main topics to cover. And the first one, really, the first half, really going to look at some basic principles around good engagement practices. Language, barriers, style, approach, the use of engagement, both within safety and beyond. At the end of that topic, which would take us about halfway through, then that's when we'll have a short break for the first set of questions and hopefully some form of discussion. We'll just see how that goes. Okay, after that, we'll go on to look at really boosting the quality of your engagements and some of the tools that can help you with this, as you can see. Okay, well then that'll take us up to the end, and we'll finish with a few more questions and a brief discussion, dependent on how much time we have. We're aiming to finish at 9 o'clock, 0900 UK time. For friends in the Middle East, I guess that will be leading up to lunchtime. Anybody in North America, well, I'm greatly impressed because it's probably the middle of the night. Well, it will be the middle of the night for you. Okay, let's get on. Just before getting into the detail of how to engage, I thought it would perhaps be worthwhile, first of all, just looking at why we should engage. Now, I'm guessing that this is probably not a question that you really need to ask, the sort of people that we've got on the call, but of course it might be a question that is asked of you by others in your organization. So we'll kick off really by saying that, of course, it's the people who really understand the risks who are actually doing the job. Not only that, they also are the people who know what actually happens. They are the people who turn those fabulous policies, procedures, safety management systems that you've so carefully put into place. They're the ones who turn those into practice. So talking to them, engaging with them, it enables us to find out what is actually going on. It also enables us to find out whether those great policies, procedures, safety management systems that we've put in place are actually practical and workable. By engaging with everybody in the organization, of course, it gives everybody that opportunity to have their say. Everybody's got a voice. Everybody should have a voice, and that voice should be heard. Going beyond the immediate benefits of that engagement, of course, if we are able to encourage that open communication, then we'll get benefit in other areas as well. Reporting of hazards, near misses, incidents, we'll hear about a lot more that's going on. And also coming forward with those suggestions for how to improve the processes, how to improve the tools, the kit, how to improve the job. Because of course it's the people doing the jobs generally who know how those jobs could be done better. And by better I mean more safely, more efficiently. Just back to the reporting hazards and near misses and incidents. Of course one of the apparent downsides of this, and people sometimes throw their hands up in horror, when we embark on a successful engagement program, if we're not careful, we suddenly apparently see our safety performance take a dip. Oh my goodness, there's more people having accidents. What on earth's going wrong? Well, of course they're not. It's just that we're now hearing about all of them. The final point to say on this, on why should we engage with people, is because it really does improve performance. We've seen this time and time again, and you might say, well, we would say that, wouldn't we? But I think also all those people who have embarked on an effective engagement program would thoroughly back that up as well. It may just be a coincidence, in which case, fine, I'll accept that, because it's a very nice, pleasant coincidence to have. But we so often see a correlation between the engagements that take place and safety performance. Here is some data that was shared with us by a large maintenance and engineering organization. They started off with it was a fairly high, well, it was a very high incident frequency rate measured here in the blue. It's actually a new build, it's a new site this, but with a lot of old attitudes, a very old culture that came into the organization at the start. And so they were unhappy with this high frequency rate, so down here introduced an engagement program. You'll see it saying SUSE. That's just one. That's our what we call our discussions, our safety discussions, safe and unsafe acts. And you can see that as the SUSE discussions went up, then the accidents came down. Maybe that's just a nice coincidence. I say there was obviously an awful lot of other stuff going on. What was interesting, particularly with this, in this case, is that what they saw was that the frequency rate plateaued out. And the great thing, and you can see the scale that we're talking here in terms of over the months and years, but it's interesting that they noticed this plateauing out and recognized that and realized that actually they had to take the engagement up to another level. And when they did take it up to another level and managed to sustain it at that level, then that's when they saw the accident rate drop, eventually all the way down to 0. Okay, so if it's so great, what is it that gets in the way? Well, partly it's all about the subject. And let's be honest, safety hasn't necessarily got the best image. Sadly, it's been perceived as being a bit negative and a bit critical. Of course, that's not necessarily surprising, because when we have to pull somebody up for an unsafe behaviour, which of course we do, however we do it, then naturally people are going to tend to be a little bit defensive. Doesn't help, of course, that media focus on safety has been typically on overzealous actions and so often a misrepresentation of the facts, all for the sake of a good headline. We can't blame it all on the media. Some of this, sadly, is due to the approach of, let's say, some of our health and safety predecessors. I'm not saying that health and safety professionals these days are all a bit, all just a bit too critical and telling, but people do have long memories, and far too often that is the experience that people have had of being talked at about safety. And then, of course, there's the other style of, oh, no, you can't possibly do it that way. Oh, no, it won't be more than my job's worth. The other problem, of course, is that we are specialists and we have our own language, like most specialists do. COSH, RIDOR, LTIR, HSG 65, Regulation 3, Section 1, Subsection A might mean something to you, but does it really mean anything whatsoever to the people that we're speaking to? We really have to learn to speak the language of the people that we are speaking to. Okay, so a good engagement, a really effective engagement it's a two-way process. It consists of good questions and good listening. Good questions, what do we mean by good questions? Well, it's those open questions that invoke some thought and a thorough, measured response. How? Why? When? How often? Why? Who? Really? Why? Why? These are the sort of questions that we need to be asking. But asking questions is only one part of it. Of course, questions, even good questions, but without listening, are just thinly veiled challenges, judgments, and assertions. Let's just consider, while we're thinking about listening, if we were to see something that interests us, we would probably look more closely, focus on the detail. We might even squint to get a better view, to be able to see it better. Well, perhaps we need to do the same with listening. Maybe we need to start squinting with our ears. What I thought at this time of the morning. Of course, good listening, one of the great benefits of that is that it leads to more better questions, deeper questions. Deeper questions lead to deeper thought, deeper insight, and of course, deeper understanding. Understanding and a potential for learning for everybody involved. And a good discussion results in much more than just that. It results in greater empathy, deeper trust, and more collaboration. Sadly, what fights against this, what goes against this, is that too many managers, and I would include health and safety managers in this category, too many people in that category see themselves or believe that others see them as experts. And of course, well, experts, they're supposed to have the answers, aren't they? Not the questions. Well, sometimes yes, but we need to recognize this, and this situation needs to be challenged. So let's just remind ourselves of the different modes of communication. Verbal, the vocal, the visual, what it is that we say, how we say it, or how we come across, how we appear. As we can see, it's the actual words, of course, that actually aren't that important. Much more important is how we express them. But streaking out way ahead is how we come across, how we appear. We all have a highly tuned, innate ability to be able to read expressions and to be able to hear other people's inner voice. And we need to be very aware of this. And to help overcome this, I have a few tips. Next top tip for the day, enthusiasm and sincerity. How best to appear enthusiastic and sincere? Well, as I say, I've got a top tip for that. The best way to appear enthusiastic and sincere to people that you are talking with is to be enthusiastic. It's to be sincere. Because if you're not, that will come shining through. Your inner voice will be shouting it out. Your expressions will give the game away. Being positive, not apologetic. Don't start your safety conversation with an apology. Oh, I'm really sorry, but do you mind if we just have a quick chat about safety? Oh, I'm ever so sorry to bother you, but shouldn't you be wearing some gloves? Let's not be sorry about it. We should be absolutely delighted to be engaging with somebody. Understanding. Understanding is really about empathy. And empathy is really, that's about seeing the situation from the other person's point of view. What it doesn't mean is agreeing. We don't have to agree with what the person is saying, but we should try and put ourselves in their position and try and understand where they're coming from. Being sensible, pragmatic, and helpful. Well, actually three things there, but I think they're all related. Partly this is about keeping things in perspective. It's also about helping people, guiding people toward the solution. Sadly, once again, far too often, we've heard, oh no, you can't do it like that. Oh, well, what should I do? Well, that's not for me to say, but you definitely can't do it like that. Well, it's not really a great deal of help, is it? Sufficient quantity. This is really taking us to a different level. What we're really talking about here, what I'm really saying here, each and every single engagement, each and every safety discussion that we can have is really, each and every one is having an impact, no doubt about it. But if we really want to make a difference in our organization, then we need to achieve a critical mass of engagements so that it just becomes a normal part of working life. A structured approach. Right, okay, well, talking about safety, it's a skill. It's something that needs to be learned. It's something that needs to be practiced. If we're going to make it easier, then using the right skills and practicing those skills will help us along the way. So giving some form of flexible structure also makes it easier. So let's just have a quick look at a structured approach. And those of you who are familiar with, we mentioned SUSE before, SUSE, talk, say, stop and talk, one-to-one, there are all sorts of different names that we can give to safety discussions. Those of you who are familiar with the work that we've done at JOMC will recognize many of these elements. The main point here is that we have to retain a flexible approach within this structure. Some people find that quite difficult. We give them a procedure and then tell them, of course you don't have to follow the procedure every time. So introductions, breaking the ice, putting people at ease. If you're going to go and talk to somebody, well, at the very least we want to know who we're talking to. They certainly want to know who it is that's talking to them. Let's not just dive in there, jump down people's throats. Let's just ease our way into it. And of course, that entirely depends who it is, how well you know them. Asking about the job, the main point in this discussion, there are two roles. Your role is to ask the questions and listen, as we said earlier, good listening. The role of the person that you're talking to, their role really is to do the talking. They're the ones who know the job. They're the ones who understand the task that they're doing. Let them tell you about it. Looking for opportunities to praise safe work. We know very well that positive reinforcement is a really powerful tool. Of course, we have to be careful how we use it. We don't want to patronize people. It has to be appropriate. If we go into the workshop and everybody is wearing their overalls and their safety shoes, well, we're not going to go to the first person we see and say, oh, hi, Joe, great to see you wearing your safety shoes. I think you've lost your mind. Having said that, of course, if last week we got into the workshop and Joe hadn't been wearing his safety shoes, well, then we'd have had a different issue. So maybe this week when we have got in, and he is, well, maybe it's appropriate to just point out the fact that we've noticed. Hey, Joe, thanks. Good to see you wearing the safety shoes this time. Excellent. Okay, I think on that, I always like a little phrase that some of you might have heard me say before. Let's go out into the workplace and try and catch people working safely. Okay, the most important element of this safety conversation is about helping people to form a picture in their mind about what could go wrong, about the consequences. It's a very simple process, it's a very simple question. Why do you think you could get hurt doing this job? It doesn't matter which words we use, you can put it into your own words. What could go wrong with this? Could anybody else be harmed by the fact that you're doing this job here at the moment? It really is probably the most important part. Now, if I was to ask, I guess, all of you about how do most of the people in your organisation work most of the time, you would probably say most of the people most of the time are working safely. Fantastic. Lots of opportunity to praise safe work. However, if there is any unsafe behaviour, and when there is any unsafe behaviour, the most important thing we need to do is to find out why. That's where the penetrating questions come in. If we discover the cause, then of course we can help to put it right. What we're after in that case is the alternative. We need a change in the behaviour, and the best place for that change of behaviour to come from is not from us, but from the person themselves. Finally, of course, we would look for some kind of a commitment, either for a change in any unsafe behaviour, or actually, just as importantly, a commitment for maintaining safe behaviour. Okay, so these are all good tools that fit fairly easily alongside any existing approach that you may have of your own. You don't have to have a SUSE approach to use these principles. In fact, let's think about some of those applications. We've talked about specific discussions, whether you encourage people to have SUSE discussions or whatever else it is that you call it. You might have a process of safety observations. Well, great. Absolutely fantastic. So once you've made your observation, once you've looked at the behaviour, once you've observed that, then of course you would want to engage with the person, talk about that behaviour. Let's use these principles. You might take a different approach again. You might embark on a sequence of behavioural audits where we go around the workplace and we are effectively measuring behaviours, safe and unsafe. I'm taking this approach myself. Of course, while you're doing that, and in fact, actually, any kind of audit, if we're doing a systems audit, what we're really trying to do is to gather information. And the best way to gather information is to talk to people and ask them and draw the information out. Okay, of course, what we should really be doing is looking for any opportunity to engage, because every opportunity gives us an opportunity to learn something, to break down a few barriers. Every inspection, every site visit, crikey, every time we walk through the site to go to the canteen, maybe we should be looking for the opportunity to engage with somebody. All of these, of course, have been focusing on a one-to-one basis, yet we can take the same principles but put them into a group setting. Let's ask members of the group to describe the coming day's work during the toolbox talk or the daily brief. Let's ask the group about any possible issues that they feel they may have. The more engagement that you have, the more effective you'll find that the session becomes. Okay, just thinking a little bit beyond safety, of course, beyond the personal safety. Of course, we can take this further to health and well-being, environmental quality, product safety, process safety. If you're in a food factory, food safety. If you're in a hospital, patient safety. Ultimately, all of these, they're all about behaviors. And the basic principles we've been talking about so far are applicable to all of these. And of course, all of these listed here can be improved and understood by better engagement. We might even, heaven forbid, go beyond our particular remit. And this is, of course, a good point, particularly for our colleagues within the organisation for whom safety may well be a core value, but their day-to-day business is in other areas. So whether it's productivity, efficiency, personnel issues, in fact, I would go as far as to say that good engagement it's really the solution to pretty much all aspects of work situations. Okay, that's me been rambling on for quite some time. I hope you've been able to hear me okay, and I hope it's all made sense. We've got an opportunity, before we move on, to look in more detail at how we can further improve the quality of our safety discussions. We have the chance for a few questions. All I'd ask is, so yeah, if you want to ask a question electronically, put your hand up, and when Sinead does give you the microphone, then please just start off by giving us your name and the nature of your business or your organisation. It would just be useful for everybody on the call, I guess. Okay, so Sinead, do we have anybody with their hand up at the moment?
No hands up at the moment.
No hands up at the moment. Nobody got any questions? Obviously.
Hold on. Anu has a question for you.
Yeah, it's Annie Spratley. I'm the EHS manager at Cathedral Hygiene. We're a waste contractor. And my question is, we have a fleet of about 120 vans where our customer care staff are visiting customers' premises and lifting waste and taking it to disposal sites. Now, I work in the head office, and I find it difficult to engage with the customer care people in the vans. I tend to do it through memos, which I send through payslips and through their supervisors. But I just wondered if you had any ideas on improving my engagement with them.
Thanks, Anu. That's yeah, a very good question, and it's not. You're certainly not the first person that I've come across with that sort of an issue. I think wherever we've got drivers, as an example, they're a very good example, but they're just one category of people who are out and about. Their workplace is not necessarily our workplace. So it's very difficult to engage with them during the task. Okay, this is where we have a very strong advantage by using the discussion and the engagement approach rather than a behavioural auditing type approach or observation. Because if you were taking an observational or auditing type approach, you just couldn't possibly do it unless you sat in the vans with them and then that will probably change the behavior anyway. What, of course, you can do, and when I say you, I don't necessarily mean just you, Anu, but their supervisors, their managers at their depots, as they come back into the depot at the end of their day of visiting clients, that's when the discussion can take place. It's not during the task, but it's still about the task. So tell me, how did you get on today? How did the job go today? And they can tell us about that. Any particular difficulties you had? Which customers have you been to today? Oh, what were they like? While you were out there, what did you think was the biggest concern that you had? Of course, that's, we're then into a discussion, into an engagement. Of course, the other alternative is to do that at the start of the day before they go out, which in some respects might be even better because the conversation remains with them during the day. So tell me, where are you off to today? What do you think the issues are going to be going there? What are the sort of problems that you think you might face? These are the sort of questions. So yeah, clearly not as effective as talking to somebody while they are doing a task, but an awful lot more effective than the other options that are open to you, I would say. Okay, I don't know if that helps. Sinead, anybody else? Any other hands up?
No other hands up.
No other hands up. Right. Well, okay, that's fine. We'll have an opportunity.
Sorry, Nick. I apologise. Suvid's got a question for you.
Ah, right. Hello, Suvid.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can indeed.
Okay, great. I just wanted to add something to the previous question, and we had the same kind of issues where people were defensive about their work because you coming from the safety or environment section, people think that you're there to fault find. One way that we did try to work around it in a previous organization was to use something that they called a START technique, in which the group that was doing the work, they were asked to look around them and to identify any risks that is there in their immediate environment, and to make a note of it and to submit these cards on a daily basis. So that sometimes it does happen that they do it mechanically, but it does force them to go through that activity as a group, maybe 2 or 3 people, to look around, and the supervisor has to communicate to them what are the risks, what is the control that has to be put in place, and is it really safe to carry on with the job? So I wouldn't say it was very successful, but it was something that did get some amount of engagement from our people. I'm just trying to add in. I hope that helps. Yeah.
No, that's great. Thanks so much for that, Suvid. Yeah, interesting point there. I think effectively what you've described there is a similar process to what we've been describing. That is perhaps pushing the issue to the individuals to get them thinking, to get them just working through what it is that they're going to be doing. Effectively, that is the point of the safety discussion, where the supervisor or the manager is taking them through that process by asking those questions, by listening to what they say, so that they can then ask further, deeper questions, with those really important questions in the heart of that. How do you think you could get hurt? What do you think could go wrong? And so, yeah, I mean, take that process, put it alongside a conversation, weave the two together. Interesting your opening comment about people sometimes defensive. Absolutely. And sadly, it goes back to what I was saying right at the start. This is a historical issue. As if we come along and, excuse me, can I just have a word with you about your safety? Oh, why? What have I done wrong? Oh, my goodness. People are immediately on the defensive. Sad, isn't it? Sad that people should think that. And ultimately, of course, our aim is to change the culture so that that isn't people's immediate thought, so that they are wanting to talk about safety. Okay, we'll maybe come back to that point in a second. I think we'd better move on. As I say, we'll have a chance for a few more questions at the end. So we're going to move on. So looking beyond quantity to quality of discussion. And one of the issues that we find is that, and this is maybe aimed at a slightly different subgroup of you that are out there, those people who have implemented a discussion program, whatever that might be, and are getting lots and lots of discussions in, lots of discussions recorded so that you can track behaviors, that sort of thing. But you're just a little bit worried about the quality of those engagements, the quality of the discussions. Okay, so let's just kick this off by reminding ourselves or asking ourselves the question, so what is a good quality discussion? A little bit of going back over what we've talked about, but I don't think we can emphasize this enough. Remember that effective safety discussion, it's a two-way process. It's about questioning and it's about listening. This isn't a lecture, and it's not something we do at people. It's something that we do with people. In an effective safety discussion, issues are tackled and dealt with. The difficult topics are not avoided. And alongside that, I would say that we're going beyond the obvious topics by digging deeper, by using a bit of imagination. One of the giveaways here, quite often when we do look at the discussions that people are having, that they are recording, and we look at the behaviors that have been talked about, then the ones that come out on top, PPE, moving around, housekeeping. Now, don't get me wrong, those are all important behaviors. But it's also very noticeable that they are highly visible behaviors. We can see whether somebody's wearing their PPE correctly or the correct PPE from across the other side of the room. We can observe very clearly people moving around. We can see whether they are on the correct walkway. We can see whether they're talking on their phone as they're walking across the road. And of course, we can observe the housekeeping. These are all important behaviors, and they are, and when unsafe, they are behaviors that regularly lead to accidents. But let's think also about some of the more hidden behaviors, the ones that just need a bit more research, a bit more digging. Let's not forget those. So, also in an effective safety discussion, remember that the behaviors are reinforced where appropriate, in the right manner, as we said before. And of course, at the heart of this good quality discussion, the consequences are explored. This is so important. In fact, I would go so far as to say this is the most important part. And in fact, if there's only one question that you ever ask anybody, if you really wanted to have the most impact from that one question, then it should be, how do you think you could get hurt doing this job? Sadly, it's the one that's so often overlooked, or it's forgotten. However much we emphasize this, certainly in any training that we do in SUSE or the like, still people either overlook it or forget it. It's such a powerful question. Yet, of course, it's quite a different question. It's not a question that we usually ask. Okay, which is perhaps why it gets missed. The other aspect of a really effective safety discussion is that when there is unsafe behavior, the motivation behind that is really understood. And of course, we don't just accept the first answer. We've got to keep asking why. so why aren't you wearing your safety glasses? Oh, I just forgot. Oh, I just forgot. Really? Oh, why did you forget? Well, I was just in a bit of a rush. Oh, right, okay. So why were you in a rush? Well, I just, I just got a bit waylaid at that last meeting, and it was more important that I got back to get back on target with the job that I was doing. Oh, right, okay. What's more important for you? Just an example, but let's not take the first. Always take the first answer. Keep digging. And of course, the really important part about this is if we do keep digging, if we do get to the true root cause, then that's all the better, all the easier for putting right. Those of you who are familiar with the ABC theory, antecedent behavior consequence, antecedent, I like to even call it a trigger because nobody uses a word like antecedent in normal language. It's the triggers for the behavior that we're trying to understand, because if we understand those, we can manage those. We can take those out of the equation. Finally, of course, a good quality discussion, it shouldn't be an unpleasant experience. And in fact, actually, I'm sure some of you have experienced that situation where you've had a really good conversation with somebody about their safety. You feel you've learned something. You believe they've learned something. You're possibly walking away from that engagement thinking, yeah, you know what, I think I've made a difference today. Well, yeah, that's not a bad feeling. So let's think about how we might build on this quality. Of course, bad habits, they're bound to creep in, and we need to overcome these. So make sure you're keeping your skills refreshed, refresher sessions, getting people together, getting your practitioners together so that they can discuss their experiences, what goes well, what doesn't go well, how they all overcome those. There's a number of quality checks, and we're going to talk about quality checks in a bit more detail in a moment. But there's a number of checks I'll take you through. But it's really about recognizing problems early and dealing with them. And one of the best ways of doing that is just listening to the general feedback. If there is a sense around the workplace, oh, no, not more of these discussions, clearly there's something not right. If there is a sense that people don't like being involved in the discussions, then I would suggest that the discussions aren't being done right. Nobody would have a problem in being involved in a good quality safety discussion. Not everybody finds this as easy as everyone else. So let's try and make it a bit easier for people. Let's provide support, either the buddy systems. Really, that's about pairing people together, perhaps from different areas. If you've got somebody who works in an office environment, then going out onto the construction site or going into the production area, going into the shop floor, that could be quite intimidating. Let's try and break down those barriers by pairing people up from those different areas. The benefit of that, of course, is that you've now got a fresh pair of eyes, somebody who's not used to being in the production area, who can ask the really obvious questions. What's that for? Why do you do it that way? The sort of questions that somebody who is very familiar with the area, perhaps they wouldn't ask. Okay, on a more formal basis is the mentoring. We'll talk a bit more about mentors again shortly. But really, the idea here is about training a few people as champions to take on that role a bit more formally. Okay, also about helping to make the discussions easier for people. One of the reasons for limited numbers of discussions that we sometimes come across is, well, I didn't really know what to talk about. Well, give people something to talk about. It makes it easier. If we can tie that into other ongoing campaigns, discussions, briefings, then it's that bit easier. You remember that manual handling training you did recently? What are the manual, if you can get it out properly, what are the manual handling implications of this task that you're doing? Is a nice easy way in. Of course, there's lessons to be learned from all of these discussions and engagements, so let's try and share those. Maybe newsletters is a good way, again, getting people together to share their learning. Well, actually, another really simple way is just the start of meetings, whatever the meeting's about, doesn't matter. It's a really strong message about your values. If we say, okay, before we start meeting our production targets, we're just going to take a few minutes just to talk about our recent discussions and ask a few people just to have a really good discussion. Okay, of course, to take that even wider across the whole business, trying to get that dialogue much more broad. And of course, we've talked about this on previous webinars, but social media is here. Okay, it's with us in many aspects of our lives, and I am absolutely convinced that social media will become hugely influential in safety, just as in so many other aspects of our lives. And some of you are already familiar with this. Some of you are already using a form of what we might loosely term social media, which all we really mean is about sharing, about collaboration. Certainly a number of you on the call are using our Engage software. And those of you who are, just recognize, of course, that what you haven't got there, you do not have a simple database for recording discussions, for tracking and trending behaviors. You have got that, but you've got so much more than that. You've got a tool for culture change in its own right. When people do record the outcomes of their conversations, they can identify the behaviors, and for the unsafe behaviors, the causes, but they can also make comments, and they can make those comments public on the front page. And of course, that gives an opportunity to provide immediate feedback, immediate sharing of lessons, immediate sharing of ideas across the whole work community. Those comments can be searched for keywords, they can be sorted by date, by risk, by popularity. You can select whose comments you look at, and more importantly, anyone and everyone can join in the discussion and gain something from it. Okay. Perhaps what we ought to do is think of our safety discussions as a behavior in their own right. Treat holding a discussion as a behavior in just the same way as wearing a seatbelt on the forklift, using the correct tool for a job. As with all of these behaviors, we need to make it easy for people. If it's as easy for people to behave safely as it is unsafely, then they probably will. So if we were able to use the gas monitor before going into the confined space, well, let's make sure that they're always on charge, that they're readily accessible, that everybody knows where they are. If we want people to wear the seatbelt on the forklift truck, let's make sure that it works, and that if it's damaged, that it gets replaced. If we want people to hold their discussions, then let's give them the tools, keep them fresh, give them the feedback so that they know that it's worthwhile. If my boss doesn't wear his PPE, why should I? If the supervisor takes a shortcut across the yard, why shouldn't I take a shortcut across the yard? And if my manager doesn't hold his safety discussions, why should I hold my safety discussions? When people are behaving safely, we touched on this, the positive reinforcement is extremely powerful. So let's give recognition for the compliance. When people are holding their discussions, let's recognize it, let's notice it. And when they're not, let's try and understand why. And once we understand the reasons behind that, then we can deal with it. Of course, related to the above two, back to that question of consequence. So what's the consequences of you not having your discussions? Well, I might not raise awareness with somebody. I might not make them think about the job. Ultimately, they could have an accident. Okay. And, of course, the consequences that we are of us carrying out our discussions is that we are making a difference. Ultimately, what we're trying to do, like all other behaviours, is just trying to get that embedded as standard practice. I find it really difficult now to, even if I wanted to drive my car without my seatbelt on, because it's so embedded. I actually find it quite difficult to walk downstairs or upstairs without holding a handrail, just because it's such embedded practice. Doesn't mean that I always do, but I'm thinking about it on those occasions when I can't. Similarly with holding discussions. Let's just make it part of the normal fabric of our daily life. Okay, I said we'd talk about mentoring. Let's just come back to that because many people have found this really beneficial. Basically, we take a group of core champions, people who are recognized within the workplace. They're the specialists that can be called on to help other people. And what we've done is we've trained many of those champions so that they can provide coaching and support in the workplace. And they can help people overcome difficulties. Maybe when people feel that they have got difficulties, actually what we often find is that people are often reluctant to ask for help. So generally found it's easier to introduce some kind of a formal scheme of regular mentor engagement. Those who need it the most get it more often. Those who don't, they don't. And in fact, we can take that a step further again and develop a form of feedback, a formal form of feedback, of scoring, some kind of a system just to help the individual to build an action plan to go forward. So that personal feedback that we can deliver. But actually, if we take all the personal feedback and we can learn the collective lessons across the group for group learning. Okay, so a few quality checks. I said we'd come back to this. Just leading on from what we just talked about, the mentor scores. If you have allocated a score after a mentor session, then that can be collectively, not individually, but collectively, those can be monitored. Just to see, well, how good are our discussions, and we can track that. Audits are important because, of course, they check what should be being done against what actually is being done. And just the same with engagements, with conversations and discussions. We can check against what people are saying they are doing against what actually is happening. And of course, the best people to ask are the people who are on the receiving end of the discussions. Let's go out to them. Let's ask them what they find. Let's ask them what they think. And there's different ways of doing this. One way that we've done this very successfully is as part of a culture reassessment. Some of you, this is obviously a topic of a different webinar at some point, talk about culture assessments to find out where your culture is. Well, quite often we go back and do a reassessment, and on some occasions we've introduced a question around the engagement. So, for instance, here, this is just some real data. What you should really read this as, you should preface the statement at the top with, compared with 18 months ago, managers and supervisors take a better approach to people when talking about safety. And there's and over 86% agreement on that statement, which is very positive. Okay, back to our quality checks. At a very simple level, then we can use the data that we've gathered from our conversations and take an initial look, a little bit hit and miss, but so a good place to start, the split of safe against unsafe discussions. If somebody's only having safe discussions and they're only identifying safe behaviours, then maybe they're avoiding some of the difficult situations. Maybe they're just not tackling the issues. If we see that somebody's only ever having unsafe discussions, then clearly they're going out on a mission to find people working unsafely. We've touched a little bit on the choice of behaviours. Are they all about PPE? And of course, when are they taking place? So that brings us almost to the end. We can have a final set of questions, but just by way of a quick summary, remember that this is really all about our communication, and we must remind ourselves that we are the salesman. We are the safety salesman, and we need to be able to sell this product of ours to people, and if we don't put it across in the right way, in the right language, then nobody's going to buy it. In terms of having a safety discussion, a good quality safety discussion, at the heart of it is a structured yet flexible approach. We need to make it as easy as possible by providing that regular focus, by giving people a lead, by giving behaviors to talk about. We need to give people support. Alongside that support, we need to be giving them feedback so that they know that it's worthwhile. Remember, our people that are holding these discussions, they are investing some of their time to go out and engage with people, okay? They need to know that it's worthwhile. They need to see some of the benefits of that. And beyond just the one-to-one engagement, we need to try and encourage as much dialogue and collaboration as possible. And just to make sure that we're on track, then some form of regular checks on performance, just as with any other behaviour or any other task, then it would be remiss of us not to do that. Okay, so that was a quick whiz through safety discussions and how to get the most out of them, and how to make sure that our people do have really effective safety discussions. And so we're left with an opportunity, a few minutes, for a final few questions. Sinead, do we have anybody with their hand up looking for an opportunity to ask a question?
No hands up.
No hands up. Okay, well, while people are thinking about that, of course, what you might want to do is you might want to just reflect on what we've been talking about, what you've heard this morning. Of course, you know, if you come up with some questions, fine. If you don't want to pose them now, then I'd be more than happy to respond to any via email, or even better, let's talk. So there's my email and my phone number. Yeah, it'd be really great to follow that through. You might be interested to know that you may well already see these via our newsletters. Some of you will. Every month we publish a series of short articles related to the sort of thing we've been talking about today. All those blog articles are available via the JOMC website. So, any final hands gone up? Anybody want to raise anything? Anybody, maybe not necessarily just ask a question, but make a point, share any examples of your own. We've got,
yes, we do have a hand up.
Okay, who have we got?
Garrett?
Yes, good morning everybody. Garrett from Holland.
Oh, hi, Garrett.
Hello, Health and Safety Coordinator at Contract Filler. We fill cans with all different drinks. Not a question, but I want to thank Sinead and Nick very much for this quite interesting webinar, and hope to speak to you soon.
Thanks very much, Garrett. That's kind of you to say. We will be running more of these. Sinead, do we have another one already lined up?
We will be having one in November. We're not too sure what the subject will be. But if anybody has any ideas and wants to email me what subjects that they'd like webinars on, please do.
Okay, well, all that remains for me to say is thank you very much to all of you. We have had quite a few of you on the call, which is great. I hope you have a great day today, and perhaps during the day you'll have some really good quality safety discussions, and you'll go out there and you'll make a difference. Any final points and any feedback that you have, again, please do email or give a call, and any suggestions on future topics that you would find interesting, that you think we might be able to cover, then please do get in touch. Okay, thanks ever so much. Have a great day.